Hi everyone, welcome back to HTML 101, and in this video I'm going to be talking about layout structure here. So I have this website open and it is smashingmagazine.com, and it is a website, it's a blog about web development and web design here. And the reason why I have it open is because I want to talk about its layout structure here, and it actually has quite a common layout structure that you see in a lot of websites on the internet today. So as you can see right on top here, there is something called a website or web header here. And this really is something that's really common in a lot of websites today, and it really gives your website an identity here. So you have your logo here. Some web pages will have a website name and maybe a tagline here. And the header also houses what we call a navigation bar here. So these are links to the most important parts of the website. And then we have our main content here, and this is basically the content that is most important for the users. And in some cases there will be a side element here, and sometimes the side element is a complementary content to the main content here, or it could be something that is not as important but it's good to know here. So for example, in this web page here, we have a email subscription, email newsletter subscription form that the creators might think that is something that the users might want, but is not absolutely essential. They really want you to look at the content of their website. So you have your main content and your side element, and in the last part, I'm just going to go right at the end, we have our web footer here, and it can house information that is not necessary for the users, but if they want to find it, they can just go to the end of the page. Sometimes maybe it will have like an acknowledgement, maybe who founded the website and such and such. So as it pertains to HTML, there are actually a few elements that you need to know to structure your layout. So I'm going to go through them one by one here. And the first, as we mentioned, that we see very commonly seen in a lot of websites is the header element here. So the header element will have your website's name. I'm just going to put your website name here, and then it might have something called a navigation. So is an nav element, and in the navigation I'm just going to put an unordered list here, and with the list item acting as your link here. So I'm going to put about, maybe another link called membership, and then I'm going to put contact. Let's put contact. So that is your header and your navigation here. So I'm just gonna refresh that page here. You can see there your header and your navigation, and then you have your main content as the main tag. And then if you want a side element, you can put the aside element, and you can put a side element, side content. And then lastly, you want something called your footer. That is your footer here. If I refresh this page, as you can see here, you have all these sections here. It doesn't actually quite look like your layout structure that I showed you just now, because these elements don't actually give you any sort of placement of where the element goes. It actually just gives you information, or rather it gives maybe search engine crawlers information about what each piece of content is about. So this actually helps with search engine indexing here. And if you're going to structure your layout, it's best if you use this element. So if you have a header of your website, please house it in the header, navigation in the nav element, main in the main content, aside in the aside element, and the footer in the footer element here. So this actually gives sort of your HTML document some sort of structure here. And if you want to actually place it the way that you saw in that website just now, you actually need to put in some stylings, which is actually beyond the scope of this series. So I won't go through that. So we're just going to talk about the different layout elements here. So okay, these are the most common ones. There are actually a few others. You have the article element here, which basically describes an article. So if you have like a blog website, and put it in an article element and give it, maybe I'm going to give it a h2. Maybe this is your article title, and then h3 will be your article description, and then you have your article content, which is in your paragraph. So that is your article element here. And if you have a content that you're not really sure what to call it, you can actually use something else called a section element here. You can just use the section element here. And if you really have like an idea of what it is, but all these elements don't really describe what your what that piece of content is, you can actually use something called a div. So this is a non-semantic container. It doesn't do anything. It just basically formats a section of your web page, and then you can just put some content here. And if you have something inline, you can use the span element here. So what's the difference between span and your div element is, if you have two divs like right below each other, above and below, you have two divs here. Just gonna put content 1 and content 2. So if you refresh this page, you can see here content 1 is on one line, content 2 is on the other line here. So if you use like a span, so I have this span here, just gonna put this span 1, and then let's copy this, and I'm just gonna put it in the next line, this one in the next line, and call it span 2. And then if I refresh the page here, as you can see here, span 1 and span 2 is right next to each other. So the div element is what we call a block level element. It occupies the whole line here, and the span element is what we call an inline element. So it does not occupy the whole line, it just occupies the space right next to it. And yeah, so those are your different layout structure elements that you can use. So we have actually come to the end of this video and the end of HTML 101. So if you actually followed through this video series, you actually learned quite a lot about HTML, but there's actually a lot more to learn about HTML. So if you want, you can go through the internet and find more information about HTML, but this actually gives you a good foundation of HTML so that you can start creating your own websites. And I'm going to create a new series called CSS 101. This is actually going to show you how to style your websites. Yeah, so please stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed this content, please give a like, subscribe, and hit the bell for your notifications, and I will see you in the next video series.